Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Jason, and this is a pretty awesome plant. This is known as Ficus umbellata. This is known as the Umbrella Ficus. It's also known as the giant Heart Leaf Ficus, as well as the Umbrella Fig. It's a pretty awesome plant. I recently just got this. I actually don't know of anywhere I've ever seen it available. So when I saw it, I thought it was the cutest thing. And it actually was right by the window where I got it. So as you can see, one of the highlights of this is one of the features of this plant that is really awesome is that the leaves, they absolutely glow when the light goes through them. So I wouldn't place them in full sun. They want bright and direct light. But you know, if they get a little bit of like morning sun or like a smidge of the evening sun as the sun goes down, you know, it's a really mild sun and that's okay. Just make sure not to give it that intense southern exposure sun, or during the summer, if it's like blazing hot in a window, I wouldn't put this plant in that window. But it does want bright and direct light. As far as the size that this plant gets, it gets to about 4 feet tall. At least that's what I've researched. This one is only a little bit less than a foot tall, so it's not very tall yet. But it is known as a fast grower, so keep that in mind, and I will see if this is a fast grower. But already I think it is, because it seems to be growing fast in the few days that I've owned it. So note that this isn't a 4-inch pot. When you pot this plant up, you want to go just a little bit at a time with most ficus plants. So when you pot it up, just go from like a 4-inch to a 6-inch to an 8-inch. I wouldn't go more than a 2-gallon pot for this plant, just because if it only does get to 4 feet tall, that's not the biggest plant in the world, and I think a 2-gallon would be fine. And if you want to keep it in a 2-gallon or even a 3-gallon pot, and it gets overly root bound over time, and do note that ficus do like to be a little bit root bound. They don't like to be root bound to the point that there's no air in the soil, so just keep an eye on your plant. If you feel like it's become overly root bound, you can do some root pruning. If you ever repot this or prune the roots, make sure that you do so in the growing season, that being the spring through the summer, because that is when this plant grows the most and the quickest. And so when you prune it or when you repot it, it recovers faster. It'll fill that soil in faster with the roots, so that when you water it, it's not as likely to rot. And do note that when you repot your plant into a bigger pot, the roots haven't filled the entire pot in, so make sure to water minimally. As far as regular water care, you want to water this plant and then allow about 25% of the soil to dry in between waterings. The care is very similar to Ficus lyrata care, also known as the fiddle leaf fig. So you want some of the soil to dry out in between waterings, but not all of it, because it does want that humidity. And I do recommend using plastic containers for it because they maintain that humidity. Just make sure not to overwater it. Also, if this is a little bit underwatered, you'll notice the leaves kind of droop a little bit. If you see that happen, just give it a little more water. If you've been watering your plant regularly, and like say you water your plant and then you give the pot a lift and you know what saturated soil feels like, if you come back and your plant's leaves are drooping and the soil is like really wet, that means that you probably overwatered it. And the symptoms for overwatering and underwatering can often be similar. So in that circumstance, I would hold off on the watering until about 25% of the soil has dried, so that you know that the roots are absorbing that water. As far as fertilizing, you want to fertilize this once a month, spring through summer, with an all-purpose indoor plant fertilizer. As far as using what soil to use when you're repotting it, I would use an indoor plant potting soil. You can also amend that a little bit with some succulent soil if you want to get a little more airspace in the soil. That always is just fine. I would say like 75% indoor plant potting soil and 25% succulent soil would be a great mixture for this plant. As far as propagation, I haven't tried to propagate it because it's kind of small, but as it gets larger, if it puts branches out, I may try to propagate it. It should root relatively easy, like its cousins. It should take from cuttings quite well. These heart-shaped leaves that are absolutely adorable, they actually become quite large, like I think like a foot wide, or just like all the way around, like big heart leaves, which is another really cool feature about this plant. I actually, I don't remember ever seeing this plant until I got it, even though this plant, it has been popular in Japanese culture, so you'll see them in homes in Japan. They've been notable for quite some time in that culture. Here in America, it's more rare. So I think after a few years or over time, it'll become less and less rare. So probably throughout this next year, you'll see it more. And so when you see it, you'll kind of know what it is, hopefully. But do remember, this is an absolutely awesome plant. Ficus are all a bit toxic. So they're an ornamental plants and they're not for eating. Toxic doesn't always mean deadly. It just means it's poisonous. And it really depends on like if your pet decides to eat the plant, like how much of it is it going to eat. So if you're worried about your pets eating this plant, you might want to think about that or consider that when choosing this, because it is a toxic plant. It's just an ornamental plant. But yeah, those hearts make me so happy. I just think they're so pretty. And when the sun is like going through the leaves, it's just gorgeous. But yeah, so we'll see. I'll have to do an update video on this plant as it grows and becomes larger. If you have any questions though about Ficus umbellata, also known as the Umbrella Ficus or the giant Heart Leaf Ficus, please feel free to let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't subscribed and you like updates on my newest videos, please click that subscribe button. Once again, my name is Jason.